questions we are asked in our media product evaluation is, in what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Our opening sequence was based around the teen horror genre, and our film, Dead Giveaway, uses many of the same formats of the genre but with some slight twists. In most horror films, there always seems to be a murder in the beginning, as with our film, and the film featured Scream, produced in 1994. But the difference is, in Dead Giveaway, the audience is seeing the aftermath of the murder, opposed to the murder itself. They wouldn't actually get to see the murder until they reached more or less the middle of the film. Also, in most horror films, murder only seems to lead to more murder, like a domino effect, one after the other after the other. However, in our film, Dead Giveaway, it's not just about the murder, it's about who is actually murdering the murderers. One of the other things making our film different to that of the generic horror genre is the fact that the beginning of our film is taking place in the daytime rather than the nighttime. With the nighttime, there usually are the same connotations of evil, bad, death, dying. However, with the daytime, it actually makes the act of burying the body seem more twisted, and the fact that these are abandoned woods is perhaps foreshadowing that they may have to return to this place in the future. We hoped by the audience seeing the 8 hours earlier that they realise that there is more to the story. The 8 hours earlier also brings a whole new host of characters, and with them, suspects. How does the film represent particular social groups? We can see in the opening sequence that the story revolves around a group of British teenagers. But divulging more into the story, perhaps we might actually get to know more about their parents and their home situation, and possibly even their teachers. With more and more teen drama television programs such as Skins and Misfits, it's likely that British teenagers are getting a very bad reputation. These programs often refer to drug use and binge drinking, but also they are actually quite popular with British teenagers. So when making the film Dead Giveaway, it was more about shooting what we knew our audiences would like and what we actually like to watch ourselves. Our characters themselves actually represent certain parts of society. For instance, Sarah, seen on the right, and Jenny on the left, represent the strong and the weak side of the female. Sarah, being the leader of the group, actually turns to physical violence, which is more of a male thing. Also, the fact that she is the leader, she's actually subverting the gender roles presented in normal horror films. However, Jenny, the weaker member of the group, relies on both of the guys to protect her, for instance, as Jason does. However, her actual physical reliance is on Michael, they both get on better, and perhaps, like this hug itself suggests that throughout the story their friendship could develop into something more. Although he is overpowered by Sarah, he is definitely the stronger of both of the two guys. Going back to Jason, it is Michael that Jenny does choose to rely on, and that he does seem to be more on Sarah's side, just wanting to get this over with, as you can see here. Also, Emily, our so far unnamed corpse, the story has yet to divulge into her background. However, throughout the beginning of the story, after watching the opening sequence, the audience will perhaps learn more about her, and the fact that they know that she is going to die could actually make them want to see perhaps how. Lastly, rather than using a predominantly white cast, we challenge the generic American films that will have minorities as victims rather than villains, giving a spin on the horror genre, hoping to attract our audience. This leads us on to our next question of who would be the audience for your film, and how did you attract or address your audience? As already mentioned, our main audience are teens and young people aged between 15 and 24. However, the film can also appeal to older generations, perhaps through the use of older actors playing parents and teachers or other members of the cast. Examples of this kind of film could be the 2008 British thriller Eden Lake, which features Jack O'Connell, who is particularly famous for his portrayal in Skins and would actually attract a teen audience. However, the older cast, Kelly Reilly and Michael Fassbender, also bring to it a more adult kind of storyline, which could also be enjoyable for the teenagers as well, appealing to a broader spectrum. We also used a questionnaire in order to determine what our target audience preferred in a film. Many answered that they enjoyed horror thrillers and often saw them with friends, but that they also enjoyed comedy films, which made us realise that it would be imperative to have some form of comedy within the later parts of the film. By having a young cast, we hoped that this would actually appeal to our target audience, as they would know about the social issues they were facing every day, such as peer pressure, drinking, drugs. But also, we put the audience in a strange position because this is not what would happen to normal teenagers. We also put the audience in a position of power, as the main protagonists in our film are not aware of the unnamed figure that has seen them burying the body, and the 8 hours later brings much anticipation to the story. What type of media institution might distribute your film and why? It is very unlikely that our film would be distributed by a major production company, and even if it was, it would be likely that these would be minor parts of studio conglomerates, such as Fox Searchlight, which produces independent and British films, BBC Films, or possibly Film 4 Productions. This is opposed to the larger parent studios such as Universal and New Line Cinema. However, lacking the use of large studios, there are schemes currently in place in the UK that are national lottery funded, one of which being Film London Microwave, which operates by giving UK filmmakers a chance to shoot their film on a micro budget. This scheme, which was in association with the now abolished UK Film Council, is still running and has produced such films as Mum and Dad, which received mostly positive reviews despite the fact that it is a low-budget British horror film. Another way films can be distributed is on the internet. The openness of the internet has increased the amount of user-generated content being uploaded to websites such as YouTube.com, and technological convergence has also had a lot to do with this. For instance, you can shoot a film on your iPhone and then upload it straight to YouTube.com through your Google account. Alternatively, independent films can create their own websites to screen their films, such as independentonlinecinema.com, which brought us viral hits such as The Hunt for Gollum and The Human Residue. Also, the internet can be used to create a buzz around a film. The use of social networking sites like Facebook, MySpace and Twitter can bring a huge following of fans and a lot of anticipation for when the film is going to release. An example of this can be seen in the use of Facebook groups such as the one for the upcoming film Beastly. This type of marketing and distribution appeals to the digital native generation, who are also our main audience. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? During the filming of our opening sequence, Dead Giveaway, we decided that I would be in charge of editing and directing the film because I also edited the preliminary task. My partners Monica Wythe and Sophia Ali would be in charge of filming, and Sophia would also be in charge of the blog. iMovie itself is actually quite simple to use because it uses the Mac's regular drag and drop features. We chose to use iMovie HD, although it is the previous version, it's actually a lot simpler to use than the newer version of iMovie. Basically, iMovie let us sort out any clips we had once we uploaded them. We were able to choose what worked and what didn't work, so then when we came up with our final clips, we were able to put them into order and then edit them. For instance, we can cut or expand certain features, and then if we don't like it, we can just undo it. Also, one important feature that I used quite a lot while we were editing was the show clip volume levels. Basically, though we had quite good sound overall, sometimes when we did have problems, for instance, we did have one problem with the microphone here. Basically, something must have hit the microphone, but we were able to overlay sound on top of it, so then the sound was practically undetectable.
You killed her!
Other important show clip levels were to do with the music featured in our opening sequence. This bar here actually shows the music, which is a piano tone that you can hear, but also it was laid over the sound of birds chirping, which gives the sense of where the audience is at the beginning of the film. Being able to use clip volume levels was actually something I learned to do after the preliminary task, when I was able to start playing around more with the clips as there was so much more of them. Also, one of the things that I learned how to do was how to do the titles and the transitions. The titles themselves are quite easy to use because all you're really doing is typing in what you want to say. However, I found the use of the transitions somewhat difficult because, as you can see here with this clip, because it's so short, it would have taken a while to go from this clip to a fade out. So instead, we use the much longer clip, which is this. So you do a fade in from black instead. Finally, looking back at the preliminary task, what do you feel you have learnt in the progression from this to the final project? One of the things that we learnt from our preliminary task was to always overshoot for footage, because it's always better to have too much than too little. For instance, you can see here that we do actually have quite a lot of unused footage. This could have just been because our actors weren't up to form, or maybe the lighting wasn't quite right. But it also let us make sure that we do have lots of different styles so that in the end we could make the choices. However, one of the sad parts about our filming was the fact that we didn't have enough footage during one of our major conflict scenes, apart from this one here. The sad fact is that even though the character Jenny is slapped, we don't actually get to see her expression apart from in this angled shot. But then again, her hair is covering her face. Perhaps if we had more time, but because, as you can see, it literally got so dark so quickly, we would have been able to compensate for that. But the changing in lighting was so substantial already in some of the clips. For instance, from this shot to this shot, it would have thrown the composition off completely. One of the last pieces of technology I used throughout this project is Screenium, which I've basically used throughout the entire part of this evaluation. It basically allows you to record what you're doing on screen, and I found it very useful, as rather than just saying something, sitting here saying something, it actually let me show you with my mouse, and it let me explain things to you in a way that couldn't really be done unless it was through me talking and then the video just playing. So I thought that the use of Screenium was actually quite successful, as was the entire project. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed Dead Giveaway.